In the deepest vaults of the Vatican Library, behind doors that require special papal permission to open, there sits a collection of medieval manuscripts that the public will never be allowed to see. These aren't religious texts, they aren't confessions or theological debates, they are maps, diagrams, detailed technical drawings of something that, if released to the world, would shatter the foundational story we've been told about where we live. The Vatican isn't alone in this. In the archives of the Library of Congress, in the restricted sections of the British Museum, in private collections owned by bloodline families whose names you would recognize instantly, there exists a parallel library of human knowledge, a shadow history. And the one thing these institutions guard most carefully, the one subject they will not allow open discussion of, is the true structure of our world. You see, the greatest conspiracy in human history isn't about who killed a president or whether we landed on the moon. Those are distractions, small scandals designed to keep your attention away from the one question that, if answered honestly, would end their control over you completely. That question is simple, almost childlike in its innocence. What shape is the world we're standing on? And what, if anything, exists above our heads? Before you dismiss this as another flat earth rant, understand something. This isn't about the shape of the ground beneath your feet. This is about what they've convinced you exists beyond your reach, in that black expanse they call space. And more importantly, it's about why they've worked so hard, spent so much money, and told so many lies to make sure you never question it. Let's start with a simple observation. When was the last time you personally verified anything you believe about space? Have you ever looked through a telescope powerful enough to see the surface details of Mars? Have you calculated the distance to a star using your own instruments? Have you launched your own satellite to photograph Earth from orbit? Of course not. None of us have. We are entirely, completely, 100% dependent on authorities to tell us what exists beyond the ceiling of our own vision. We take it on faith. We trust the images they show us, the numbers they provide, the models they build. We are, in essence, children being told a bedtime story about the universe. And we believe it because the storyteller wears a lab coat and speaks with authority. But what if I told you that throughout most of human history, across every ancient civilization that left records, the story was completely different? What if I told you that the dome of the sky wasn't just a poetic metaphor, but a literal description of observable reality? What if the reason they guard those old manuscripts so carefully is because they contain engineering diagrams, precise measurements, and astronomical observations that contradict everything we've been taught since childhood? There's a reason the Catholic Church, that ancient institution with roots reaching back into pre-Christian Rome, keeps those documents locked away. There's a reason that during the Renaissance, when the new model of the cosmos was being constructed, certain books were burned, certain scholars were silenced, and certain ideas were declared heretical. It wasn't because the Church hated science. It was because they were protecting a secret about the nature of our reality that, if widely understood, would make their authority irrelevant. Let me show you what they're hiding. In those forbidden archives, among the illuminated manuscripts and star charts drawn by monks who spent lifetimes studying the heavens, there's a recurring image. It appears in different cultures, in different eras, drawn by people who never had contact with each other. It's an image of a traveler, usually a monk or a scholar, who has journeyed to the edge of the known world. And at this edge, he encounters something shocking. The sky isn't an infinite void, it's a barrier, a dome. And in the most detailed versions of these illustrations, the traveler actually breaks through this dome, peeling back the blue curtain of what we call the sky, and glimpses what lies beyond. What does he see? Not more empty space, not distant galaxies. He sees gears, machinery, a complex mechanism of wheels within wheels, turning and grinding, driving the celestial bodies we observe from below. He sees the truth that the ancients knew, and that was systematically erased from public knowledge. The universe isn't what they've told us. It's something far stranger, far more intentional, and far more confined. Now, here's where it gets interesting. These images weren't created by ignorant, superstitious primitives who didn't understand science. Many of these manuscripts were produced during eras of incredible astronomical sophistication. The people who drew these diagrams could predict eclipses with precision. They understood planetary movements. They had mathematical models that worked. The idea that they simply didn't know any better insults their intelligence and ignores the evidence. They drew what they saw. They documented what they measured. And then, at a very specific point in history, this knowledge was declared false, heretical, dangerous. Not because it was proven wrong, but because it was inconvenient. The question we should be asking isn't whether these ancient scholars were correct. The question is, why was it so important to erase their version of reality and replace it with the model we have now? Think about the timing. The heliocentric model, the idea that Earth revolves around the sun, and that we live in an infinite universe filled with countless worlds, became the dominant narrative during the same period when European powers were colonizing the globe. When they needed to convince populations that the world was vast, that there were endless frontiers to explore, endless resources to exploit, endless reasons to expand empires and fund expensive expeditions. It was also the period when the authority of the church was being challenged, when new institutions of power were being built, when control over knowledge was shifting from monasteries to universities, from priests to scientists. Is it really so hard to believe that the cosmology we were given served a political purpose? That the story of an infinite universe was more useful to the powers of that era than the story of a finite, enclosed world? After all, if people believe they live under a dome, inside a created structure with clear boundaries and a definable purpose, they start asking very uncomfortable questions. Who built this? Why are we here? What is our role in this system? But if you tell people they live on a random rock floating in infinite meaningless space, that they're cosmic accidents with no special purpose, they stop asking those questions. They become easier to control. They accept their insignificance. They focus on material survival and stop looking for deeper meaning. This is the genius of the deception. It's not just about hiding the shape of the world. It's about hiding the implications of that shape. Because if we live inside a structure, a created environment, then everything changes. Every assumption about our origins, our purpose, our future is immediately called into question. But let's move beyond philosophy and into evidence. Because the cover-up isn't just about ancient manuscripts. It's happening right now, in real time. And if you know where to look, the cracks in the official story are everywhere. Let's talk about space travel. We are told that multiple nations have sent probes beyond our solar system. Voyager 1, launched in 1970, supposedly exited the heliosphere in 2012 and is now drifting through interstellar space, sending back data from the void. This narrative is presented as established fact, but here's what they don't emphasize. The farther these probes supposedly travel, the more their behavior stops making sense. Signals are delayed far longer than physics predicts. Trajectories shift in ways that violate the models. And most tellingly, no probe has ever sent back an image that couldn't have been created in a computer. Every photograph of distant space, every rendering of the cosmos beyond our immediate vicinity is a composite, an interpretation, a best guess. We have never seen, with unfiltered human eyes or unprocessed cameras, what exists at the edge of our local system. And there's a reason for that. They can't show you what doesn't exist. Consider the International Space Station. Hundreds of hours of footage, thousands of photographs, live streams running continuously. And yet, with all that documentation, have you ever seen a single piece of footage showing the Earth as a complete, uncut, unedited sphere rotating beneath the station in real time? Every image you have seen of Earth from space is either a composite stitched together from multiple photos, a CGI rendering admittedly created by artists, or a shot so carefully framed that you can't verify scale, distance, or curvature independently. Even NASA admits on their own website that many of their iconic images of Earth are photoshopped because, in their words, it has to be. Why does it have to be? If the Earth is exactly as they describe it, why can't they just take one honest photograph and end all debate forever? The answer should be obvious. They can't show you what isn't there. Now, let's address the most direct piece of evidence that something is being hidden. The Antarctic Treaty. Signed in 1961, this agreement between the world's superpowers declares an entire continent off-limits to independent exploration. It's sold to the public as an environmental protection measure, a way to preserve the pristine wilderness of Antarctica. But think about what this actually means. In an age where you can buy a ticket to space as a tourist, where private citizens are planning missions to Mars, you are still not allowed to independently explore Antarctica. If you try to mount an expedition without government approval, you will be stopped. If you attempt to cross certain boundaries, you will be turned back by military force. Why? What is in Antarctica that requires this level of secrecy and control? The official story is that it's just ice, penguins, scientific research stations studying climate. But then why the military presence? Why the absolute prohibition on unauthorized travel? Why have multiple explorers who attempted to document the furthest reaches of the continent reported strange phenomena, equipment malfunctions, and in some cases, simply disappeared? Here's the uncomfortable possibility. Antarctica isn't the bottom of a globe. It's the edge, the boundary, the place where the dome meets the ground. And if that's true, then the people who control access to Antarctica control access to the truth. They control the one place on Earth where you could physically verify the shape and structure of our world, and they will never ever let you go there freely. This brings us back to those ancient manuscripts, to those medieval diagrams showing a traveler breaking through the firmament. Because what those images depicted wasn't fantasy, it was memory, a record of a time when humanity understood the truth and had perhaps even found ways to interact with the structure of our reality. The dome isn't invisible, it's not intangible. Throughout history, there have been accounts of objects striking it, of auroras being reflections on its inner surface, of atmospheric phenomena that only make sense if there is a physical barrier above us. But these accounts have been scrubbed from mainstream science, relegated to folklore, dismissed as primitive misunderstandings. Yet the evidence persists. In 1962, the United States military conducted a series of high-altitude nuclear tests called Operation Fishbowl. The stated purpose was to study the effects of nuclear weapons in space, but the actual results were classified for decades. When documents were finally declassified, they revealed something strange. The explosions behaved in ways that didn't match predictions. The radiation patterns were wrong. The electromagnetic pulses were far more contained than they should have been, as if the energy was reflecting off something above the detonation point. And in the aftermath, military scientists began speaking carefully, cryptically, about the unexpected resilience of what they called the upper barrier. What barrier? If space is an infinite vacuum, what barrier could they possibly be referring to? The answer, of course, is the one thing they will never officially confirm. There is a physical structure above us, a dome, a firmament, a crystalline shell, whatever you want to call it, and the entire apparatus of modern science, the entire narrative of space exploration, the entire trillion-dollar infrastructure of satellites and telescopes and space agencies exists for one purpose: to maintain the lie, to keep you from looking up and seeing the truth, to keep you from asking the one question that would unravel everything. If we live inside a created structure, who created it and why? That question terrifies them more than anything else, because once you start asking it, you can't be controlled anymore. You stop accepting their authority. You stop believing they're experts. You start seeking answers in places they've declared off limits. You start looking at ancient wisdom, forbidden texts, suppressed research. You become dangerous. This is why the manuscripts are locked away. This is why Antarctica is guarded. This is why every image from space is carefully processed before you see it. This is why independent researchers who get too close to the truth are discredited, defunded, or silenced. The dome isn't a theory. It's a fact they've spent centuries hiding, and the evidence is everywhere once you know to look for it. So, what do you do with this information? You have two choices. You can close this video, forget what you've heard, and return to the comfortable lie. You can trust the authorities, believe the textbooks, and accept that you live on a random ball spinning through infinite emptiness. That's the easy path. It requires nothing from you except obedience. Or you can choose the harder path. You can start asking questions. You can dig into those forbidden archives, study the suppressed research, examine the inconsistencies in the official story. You can begin the process of unlearning everything you were taught and discovering what actually lies above your head. You can join the growing number of people who refuse to accept the narrative and are actively working to expose the truth. But I'll warn you now, once you see the cracks in the dome, you can't unsee them. Once you understand the scale of the deception, your entire worldview will shatter. You will look at the night sky differently. You will question every authority figure who asks for your trust. You will realize that almost everything you were taught about reality was a carefully constructed prison for your mind. The choice is yours, but the truth is waiting, and it's been waiting in those locked archives, in those forbidden manuscripts, in those classified military documents for longer than you've been alive. The only question is whether you're ready to see it. If you want to know more, if you're ready to go deeper into what they're hiding and why, subscribe to this channel. Because what we've discussed today is just the beginning. The dome is real, the cover-up is massive, and the implications of both are more profound than you can possibly imagine. The day of Numa is just around the corner.